What is happening, team? My name is John Denton. If you didn't already know, time for another tier list. And this time, given that it has been the West day ever recently, it's time for the Kanye West album tier list. Now, quickly, before I start, first of all, it's just a bit of fun. I did the weekend song tier list, bit controversial, but people seem to enjoy it overall. Again, this one, unlike that one, this one is going to be albums because there's so many songs. I've got something else planned for Kanye's songs. Subscribe if you're new around here. Make sure you follow me Twitter and Instagram. And by the way, this is just Kanye's solo projects, so don't expect to watch the throne, don't expect kids he goes. Okay, so let's jump straight into this thing. Okay, starting with the College Dropout then. But what I wanted to do as well, just before I jump in and give you my own thoughts on the record and a little bit of context around where I was in my life then, I put it out to my Patreon group to give their thoughts on some of their favourite Kanye records as well. So I'm going to bring up some of those throughout this video. If you want to get involved with that, there's a link down in the description. You get uncut album reactions and extra album reactions as well. Whole support structure for the channel. But anyway, Figerson, the College Dropout, a perfect start to a legendary career. Going back and listening to it, it's like looking at old photos nostalgically. It contains some of Kanye's best songs of all time, tied together in a fantastic narrative. Yeah, well said. So this record I heard when all the way back when it came out, when I was still working for HSBC Bank doing data entry back during my real grind days outside of finishing college, actually. And I sat next to a guy who was more into hip-hop than me. He'd only been there a little while. And he put me onto this album back when he shared MP3s and things like that. And I remember I'd read a little bit about it in Enemy magazine, and I didn't really know what to think. I didn't even know how to say the name. I thought it was like Kane or something like that, and not the first. But yeah, listening to this record for the first time, with the way the soul samples were used, with the songs like Jesus Walks and Spaceship, it really, really blew my mind at the time and really gave me an insight into what was possible in hip-hop music. And it's only later that I found out that Kanye was actually responsible for production on a lot of the Blueprint, which was the first hip-hop record I really probably fell in love with as an album. I'd listened to other tracks before, listened to music all throughout being younger, but Blueprint was the one that made me really fall in love with the genre. So yeah, just hearing that taken to another level in terms of production on this record really opened my eyes. And that song Spaceship as well, as I was taking that walk to this job in a dreary tower block in Southampton, doing data entry, just putting numbers in boxes day in, day out. Hearing that song, Spaceship, really pushed me to try and do something else with my life, to be honest, and ended up getting out of that job and getting into games journalism all those years ago. So let's put it somewhere on this list. Now, we've got God tier down to trash. Unlike the Weeknd, on the Weeknd song list, I wanted everything to be within context of Abel's music, just because I didn't think any of his songs were really trash. So it was all kind of connected to each other. This is different. This is just my thoughts, okay? And as I do more album tier lists, it would just be my thoughts. So chances are most of these are going to appear pretty high. So I'm going to go amazing for the College Dropout. I'm going to go amazing because so much of it is aged extremely well. Some of it does sound a little bit old now. That doesn't really matter because it's a time and place type of thing. It's a legendary record, but I'm not going to put it all the way up to God tier. But yeah, fantastic stuff. Changed my brain about everything to do with music, to be honest, and still sounds great today. And Jesus Walks is still just an absolutely legendary piece of music. So yeah, amazing for the College Dropout. Right, so we move on to Late Registration. What from the Patreon group did anyone have to say about Late Registration? Let's bring it up. Got Leo Alejandria, beautiful name. He picks Late Registration because I think these are the best samples Kanye has ever used in an album. He continues on a similar lyrical direction as College Dropout, but a little more sophisticated, and he expands on a lot more topics, whereas work comes off as more mature, and the production is 10 out of 10 too. I pretty much agree with everything he has to say. When I first heard this record, I found it a little bit harder to get into, I think, than College Dropout. There had been singles from it, like Gold Digger, obviously, which are very palatable and very easy to get into. But you've got tracks like Dry Slow, tracks like Crack Music, which, as somebody who was perhaps not necessarily diving so much into the lyrics still as a hip-hop listener, were harder for me to kind of get my head around. But then on the contrast to that, you had like amazing songs like Hey Mama and, you know, the Heartbreak in Roses. So, you know, there's no doubt that even on first listen, and first few listens, I did really, really admire and enjoy the album, but I don't remember at the time enjoying it as much as the College Dropout. I've since gone back and listened to it many, many times, and as my ear for hip-hop has improved, especially over the last couple of years, I've grown a sort of greater appreciation for a lot of what he's saying in a lot of these songs. I still think the album is perhaps a tiny bit long. There are a couple of tracks on there that aren't quite to the same high standard as some of the others, but still, are we kidding around here? It's another amazing album. Of course it is. It's going next to the College Dropout at the amazing level. So yeah, I mean, it is brilliant. And go and listen to Roses again. I mean, amazing track. And back then as well, I wasn't hearing rap tracks like that at all. Right, Graduation Time. Now this one, when I first heard it, strangely, it didn't connect with me in the same way. And I think it was to do with the production. Obviously, there's less soul samples on Graduation and on the previous two records, and at the time I was still listening to, I mean I still do, but I still listen to tons of different genres, a lot of rock music, a lot of metal, a lot of indie music, and probably not so much hip hop music at the time that this dropped. And when it dropped and it didn't have the soul samples straight away in A Good Morning, it didn't really connect with me in the same way. And you know what, it was only when I went and played GTA 4, I actually reviewed GTA 4 up at Rockstar's offices in London. This was back when I was a games journalist. And their Flashing Lights from this album is on the soundtrack to that game. I'm going back in time here, but just bear with me a second. So yeah, there's a part in that game where you have to choose between basically killing two people. Playboy X, I think, is one of them, and I think the other guy is called Dwayne? I should have looked this up beforehand. Anyway, if you've played it, you know the bit. It's about 10 hours in, maybe. You have to choose between killing these two people. And at the time, that didn't really happen, especially kind of outside of RPGs. And I was really racking my brains about this decision, because at the time the game was so immersive and just like completely different level to anything that had come before. And I remember getting in a car in a game, and it was dark and it was raining, and this song Flashing Lights came on the radio, and I drove through the streets of Liberty City, New York, with the rain coming down and it like reflecting off the lights in the traffic and everything like that. You've never seen anything like that in a time. And I was in a dark room in Rockstar's offices with amazing headphones, and honestly, like, must have been a 70-inch TV, just completely and utterly immersed. And the song added so much to that moment. It made me then reappreciate, or want to go and reappreciate the record. I went back, gave the record more time after this. Not only did I fall in love with that song completely, but also even songs like Homecoming with Chris Martin on fine form in that track. And you go through and it's pretty much stellar all the way through. Amazing production, some really joyous moments on there. So listen, I'm going to be predictable here, and I'm going to put it in amazing. Oh, we didn't open a Patreon group for this one. Let's see. We did have one for Graduation. From Joshua. He said, grew up listening to it, and something about the cover art has always stuck with me, and just looking at it brings me great vibes. From the perfect song to start the day, to, well, Good Morning obviously, to the T-Pain feature, to the beautiful instrumentals from Flashing Lights and The Glory, to lastly the genius writing ability to describe Chicago as a female in Homecoming. Chef's kiss. Just the perfect album to play anytime. Sometimes I wish I could forget it all just to have another first listen to this album. You know, I think we all feel that about a lot of records. So yeah, this is the most predictable tier list of all time so far. But now we move on to 808, and yeah, I mean, what a phenomenal record. Let's go straight into the Patreon comments for this one. I know we had one for this as well from Andrew. It said, blasphemy, I know, but the music probably means more to me than lyrics or flow when it comes to hip-hop. That is certainly how I was. I'm not necessarily like that so much now, but it's definitely still a big part as somebody who listened and grew up, listened to all sorts of different genres, some which didn't have any words, you know, electronica and things like that. And 808 is so out there, unlike anything I'd heard at the time before I fell in love first listen. Led me to Travis and so many other forms of trap and melodic hip hop. Yeah, I remember listening to this for the first time, just in work when I was working as a games journalist, and not even really understanding what I was hearing. I hadn't heard that kind of auto-tune vocoder stuff outside of a Cher song really before that. But the more I listened to it, it really started to work. You've got songs like Amazing, obviously, which has that driving beat. Love Lockdown, again, driving beat. And just, I was like, how is this guy who's produced these 3 albums, these 3 rap albums, which I love, is now making music like something I've literally never heard before? And that really opened my mind to the kind of creative genius of Kanye. And while some of that album doesn't necessarily hold up in the same way, it's a bit inconsistent all the way through. The track Robocop, for example, I'm good, I don't need to hear that one. I think in terms of this record being like seminal, in terms of it changing the sound of hip-hop forever, in terms of it opening the doors for so many artists, and obviously you had Cudi involved in the record as well, but and in terms of how it affected me, guys, I'm gonna go amazing. Worst tier list of all time. It's a line. It's gonna be a line. Ridiculous. Remember, this is compared to all music as well. This isn't just within Kanye's own back catalogue. Different to the Weeknd one. Why did I change the rules? Don't know what I'm doing half the time. Making this stuff up as I go. No, it's all fun. It's all fun. I like the tier list went well. People seem to like it, so I'm definitely going to do more. And it's fun to do. It's fun to put little things in boxes. I like doing it. Okay, next up, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I get asked to react to this album every single day, and I can't. I can't react to it. I can do a flashback reaction, but I can't react to it because I heard it when it came out, like all of Kanye's albums. So it's a shame because I've missed out on probably millions of views doing a Kanye season, but I already heard them. So, you know, you're not going to lie to you guys. This album is unbelievable. When I first heard it, I could not compute the brilliance of it. From Gorgeous to Monster to Runaway, Devil in a New Dress. Absolutely all of the lights. Absolutely mind-blowing music. I don't think at the time I'd ever heard anything so dense with so many layers. There was so much going on, all these different artists. The first time I heard Nicki Minaj on Monster blew my brain. Because honestly, I don't think I'd heard, and that's on me, but I don't think I'd heard a female rapper at the time like reach that level. That's not to say that that wasn't happening. That was to do with the small amount of music from female rappers that I'd heard. But at the same time, mind-blowing verse, mind-blowing record. You go back to it now, and it still sounds fucking incredible. Like Gorgeous and Devil in a New Dress, just insane. I think it's his best work. I think it's an absolute masterpiece. Let's see what the Patreon group has to say about it. I think this had more than one. I only put this up for a little amount of time, so apologies if you didn't make it onto this one. In future ones in the Patreon group, I'll put it up a day before so we can get loads. See how it goes. It's nice to get a bit of feedback. So Jaden, the perfect culmination of every album Ye released at that point. The beats are varied and multi-layered. Look at how good these comments are, by the way. The features are phenomenal, and despite the track's longer runtimes, none of them seem to overstay their welcome. Easy 10 out of 10 album. I would also give it 10 out of 10 if I was reviewing it. And from Stin Backer, sorry if I said that wrong, Stin. It might be a common pick for his best work, but I genuinely think this is one of the best pieces of music put together in the last 10 years. I don't think I've ever heard an album where the first, definitely 9 tracks just don't miss. The ego and cockiness in the songwriting, which he talks about the dark sides of fame, together with the amazing production, really makes it a 10 out of 10 for me. Just listen to Devil in a New Dress again, please do. I did just before doing this, in fact. Ridiculous track, incredible. Guys, no way this can go anywhere below God tier. The top tier, the rare top tier. Astonishing record. Absolutely astonishing. I actually went and listened to Fantano's 6 out of 10 before this as well, because I just wanted to kind of get my head around where he was at the time. And obviously a much younger man back then, as we all were. But I just can't get my head around that one. Listen, everybody's entitled to their opinions, and that's a man I respect a lot, both as like a YouTube content creator and a guy with unbelievable music knowledge and the ability to articulate that music knowledge. But I'll never get my head around that. There are certain, but that, you know, he'll probably think about some of the things that I say if he ever watches it. Anyway, whatever. God tier. Okay, moving on then. We're getting there now. Yeezus. Now, this is a controversial pick because Yeezus, for me, is phenomenal. Yeezus, for me, is one of my favourite albums ever. But I know Yeezus for a lot of people. Like, I watched Big Quint's reaction to it, and it wasn't really working for him at the time. But I think me coming from a place where not only was I a metalhead, but I liked industrial music. 9 Inch Nails, one of my all-time favourite bands. I liked some difficult kind of electronic music, like Japanese artist Cornelius. I listened to drum and bass growing up, Ronnie Size, all sorts of different types of influences in my musical background. To hear it all culminate in something so challenging at the time in Yeezus was, especially coming off My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, with the luxury in a production and that, to have something so stripped back, so raw, so challenging, so difficult. It blew my mind, and I thought this is one of the most amazing things I'd ever heard when I first heard it, and really, really cemented, if it hadn't been cemented already, Kanye's creative genius. Because I was like, how can you go from 808s to My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy to Yeezus? It's 3 records in a row. They're all so different. They're so creative. On Sight is such a challenging track. Amazing, amazing track. New Slaves. Blood on the Leaves. Bound 2. God Tier. God Tier. Controversial statement. People could be mad at me for that one. I don't care. That's God Tier to me. That's what it's all about. Patreon group, what you saying? What you saying on Yeezus? We had one. I know we had one. Ivan, Yeezus, because that was Kanye's best era from his cockiness to music/fashion, which made him a GOAT, and the Yeezus tour was the best concert of the decade for an iconic master of the stage design and performance of the songs. God fucking tier. Alright. Moving on then. Moving on. The Life of Pablo. This one was a funny one for me. Obviously, we waited and waited and waited, and this was one of his like notorious delays. And then the cover art came out, and you're like, what am I even seeing? And when I put the record on for the first time, I wanted another My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy or another Yeezus. And what I got was very confusing at the time. When I first heard it, what I got was obviously a lot of religious overtones in there, which obviously is a common theme throughout his music. But I felt like the album was all over the place, and that combined with the crazy launch with the fashion show and everything like that, and all the delays, I felt like it was too much was going on. I didn't really get the album on first listen. And I kind of wrote it off in my mind as just he'd kind of lost the plot a little bit. But I've since gone back and listened to it multiple times. And there are actually loads and loads of fantastic tracks, from No More Parties in LA to Ultralight Beam, obviously Father Stretch Your Hands. I mean, Wolves, there are great tracks on there. I do think there are some tracks as well which don't hit quite as well. And it is a bit all over the place. It is a little bit like manic in many ways as a record. Obviously he added the incredible Saint Pablo afterwards, but I guess that's part of the record now, so I kind of have to include it in that. And I like the fact that he sort of patched the album, which nobody had ever done before, and that's, you see that sometimes now, but still not too much. But I don't think I would ever hold this album up to the same standards as the previous 6. Even though I'll go back and listen to songs on it and love them. And I know this is, for some people, it's their favourite one, but I'm just going to put it into good for now, for me. Well, not for now, for this tier list, which, yeah, it's not quite on the amazing level for me. It's definitely not God tier. And don't get me wrong, I still really, really like the record, and I really, really love some of the songs on it. But it's not one I'll go back to as many times as the others. We did have a comment from the Patreon group, though, on this one. Let's have a look. It's from Jay Rimmer. Personally, just love how unstructured the album is and how raw it is. Got so many good songs like No More Parties in LA with Kendrick and Ultralight Beam. I know it's not considered a classic, but it's personally my favourite, and I expect it will be for some people. And I love the fact that you can appreciate the unstructured nature of it, because that is something I've gone on to appreciate about it. And it's not like I demand structure from my records. I like stuff that's experimental and difficult as well, but I also have to be real and put stuff in the tier list. So okay, we've got 2 more to go now, and now things get a little bit different. We don't have any comments in the Patreon group in either of these, which doesn't really surprise me, especially as I didn't put it up for that long. And bear in mind, I'm not doing the collab albums, it's just the Kanye single albums, solo projects. So we got Yay, an album which obviously kicked off the good summer, or whatever you want to call it, with all these 7-track records. Actually, that's not true, Daytona came out before it, so I'm talking nonsense. But an album which, it didn't really have enough to it. It felt a bit unfinished and a bit all over the place. Yet you've still got tracks like Ghost Town, which, they really do stand the test of time. And it's almost like you can hear in Yay the real sound of a mind fracturing. And in Kids See Ghosts, which I'm not going to do for this list, you can almost feel it like healing itself and coming back together in a different way. Obviously you've got the track Reborn on there, which is a very, very powerful track for anybody who's ever gone through anything in terms of their mental health. But Ye's a difficult listen, man. It really felt like Kanye was really struggling at the time. A lot of stuff he was saying was fucking crackers. Obviously we had the MAGA hat Kanye, We now know that's maybe a long con in order to kind of get inside the White House and get stuff done. We shall see. We shall see where he is in terms of some of the stuff he's saying and doing right now. But regardless, sort of at the time, you're like, the stuff he was saying as well about the slavery and things like that. You're like, what is going on here? And while some of the songs do hold up, I don't think I could put it anywhere other than mid. Just because, am I going back and listening to Ye? No. I'll listen to Ghost Town every now and then, but I'm not really putting that record on very often. And then when you compare it to Kids See Ghosts, which again I'm not putting in the list for some reason, fuck it. But do you know it's here? Watch the Throne and Cruel Summer aren't here. Kids See Ghosts is here. I'm going to break my own rules and put it in because I'm talking about it, and I do think the two are very important to put next to each other. So I'm going to put Kids See Ghosts in Amazing. Like I said, I broke my own rules here. It went into the beginning of Amazing. Go to the end of, there you go. It's at the end of Amazing now. Because that is a record that really showcased the kind of higher elements of Kanye's music and his lyricism, but also brought in some of the most manic samples, the craziest, like the Christmas one and everything like that. You got that amazing Cuddy montage. I love that track. I wouldn't go all the way to a 10 out of 10 on that one like Fantano did, but it would probably be a solid 9 for me. So that's why it's going into Amazing. Broke my own rules. Why do you even watch my channel? Right, finally, before God's Country drops, we've got Jesus is King. A derided album, a mocked album, an album certainly that still feels a bit unfinished, the weird Chick-fil-A song. But I think it's a solid record, guys. Honestly, I think it's a solid record. I think Follow God is a killer track, and I'm not a religious person myself, but I got like taken up by some of those beats as well. Obviously, I had the crazy stuff with what was that song? I've forgotten the name of it now. The Poop the Scoop song. What's it called? The drop beforehand and everything, and it was all very confusing. And I like the fact that with Washes in the Bloody, he said it was going to release on a day at a time, and it did. It's like that. I appreciate that. But I'm going to put it in solid because I will occasionally go back and listen to this record. And I remember my first reaction, which is my only Kanye first reaction in terms of an album that's on the channel. Actually, I did a first reaction to Ye back on Rock Reacts. But there's no way, the album hit for me, man. It did hit for me, and it kind of took me somewhere, and it makes me feel warm inside. And that's strange, as I'm not a religious person. But I'm not anti-religious either, and I appreciate spirituality, and I appreciate people being able to be taken up by I don't know, I kind of sit in a funny place with that sort of stuff. But Jesus is King, despite being a flawed record, despite feeling a bit unfinished and a bit rushed at times, has moments. It definitely has moments. And I think I would rather go back and listen to that than Ye, especially as I find Ye quite a difficult listen and an unpleasant listen in many ways, because it makes me feel like my brain is fracturing. So guys, that's about it. Like, we look forward to God's Country. What that's going to be like, I have no idea. But, I'm always here for Kanye's music. I'm always excited to hear what he has coming up next. An incredible catalogue over such a long period of time. And that's my tier list, guys. I'm going to bring it back up on the screen now just so we can go through it all. God Tier, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and Yeezus. Amazing. College Dropout, Late Registration, and Graduation, and 808, and Kids See Ghosts, because I broke my own rules. We've got good, Life of Pablo, we got solid with Jesus is King, and we just got mid with Ye. Nothing in the trash tier for me in this Kanye tier list. Really enjoyed doing this. This was good fun. And it was nice to be able to chat about where I was in my life when some of these records came out. Really nice to be able to read some of you guys' comments as well in the Patreon if you want to get involved with that for future things. And there'll be other videos involving Patreon commentary. Just check the link in the description. Like I say, the entire support structure for the channel. Guys, that's about it for me. Really enjoyed doing this. Thank you very much for watching. I've been John Denton. Follow me on social media, subscribe to the channel, subscribe. Well, I don't even know what I just said there, that wasn't even a word. Catch you on the next one. Peace.